When I was 13 years old, I then went on to plant 14 trees on my 14th birthday. Those first steps were extremely painful. They were painful because people used to bully me online and offline. And of course, whenever you start something new, that is the response that you get. Soon I started Youth Climate Activist Pakistan with 100+ activists from across Pakistan to mobilize and have tough conversations regarding the climate crisis. There, we ask tough questions, have tough conversations, and we mobilize youth and talk about the climate crisis. We also organize protests and challenge our government and governments around the world. This brings me to the purpose of my talk here today. The climate crisis is inevitably happening. So then why are we unmoved? Climate change is something that is happening on the land that we stand on today. It is happening in our country with 33 million people displaced, with flooding or monsoon flooding, and it is happening this year alone. We have seen heat waves and forest fires as well as floods. So then why have we been unable to rally and talk about this issue and work to solve this issue? Most importantly, why has the youth been unable to rally around and work on this issue? And what is the role of youth in solving this crisis? There is no doubt that Pakistani youth is spearheading the climate crisis, and youth around the world are spearheading the climate movement. So what is Pakistani youth's role? We know that some countries are more affected than others when it comes to climate change because we are not responsible for the climate crisis. But there are some nations that are responsible for the climate crisis and some nations that are bearing the brunt of it. So what does Pakistani youth have to do to be able to solve this issue? That is the question and the topic that I want to discuss with you today. One question that I'm always asked as somebody that has been working on climate change for the last 5 years is, what have you been able to achieve? I think that that is something that international journalists and local journalists and people all around the world want to know. What has Pakistani youth and what have we achieved as youth working on the climate crisis? And I think this is a very difficult question because what have we achieved? It is difficult to answer because it is something that you cannot put into statistics or data. But I think we've been able to largely influence the discourse on climate change. And I think the biggest achievement this year was that many youth from Pakistan went to COP27. What is COP27? COP27 is a conference of the parties, which was the 27th conference this year, which is the biggest United Nations climate change conference that happens every single year, and it has happened for 27 years. There were leaders, NGOs, IGOs, and youth from around the world, civil society gather. And this year we had 32,000 attendees, where they negotiate on the climate crisis to try to come to a solution, or at least be able to adapt to this issue. COP27 was an interesting experience. First of all, I realized that there are many people and many world leaders that are children inside. Their brains are being worked by children, and they wear rich and they are rich white men in the disguise of children. I also realized that the United Nations, because it is a UN conference, that nations aren't actually united. But one thing that I learned, which was, I believe, the most important, was that real change is happening on the ground, by on-the-ground movements and on-the-ground individuals working to organize and mobilize. Youth, though may not have power, are powerful. We may not have the traditional power that world leaders have, but we are powerful because although you may not see these people on camera, these are the people that are driving change and were able to bring about the loss and damage finance facility, which is crucial and needed for the people of Pakistan. A loss and damage finance facility that was agreed upon at COP27 was basically aid to the people and reparations that are owed to the people of Pakistan by Western nations that have caused this crisis. But youth, because they are so important, are not the only ones driving change. As they say, that youth are the ones that you look to for change, but adults and old people are the ones that you look to for wisdom. We need the support of people that are older than us, that have experienced this crisis and many crises, and we need their support. We need to work together, not only the youth, but old and young alike, and we must come to a solution together. I believe that if we are to join the groups and the local movements that are already existing and help in our own ways, that climate change and climate activism is not a title that is meant for just one person, or meant after that you owe that title or own that title after 5 years of activism. But I believe that we are all activists in our own fields, and that we must all activate to fight this crisis in our own fields and in our own departments. And that we are all climate activists, because we are all here on this planet Earth to fight one of the biggest crises that humanity has ever faced. If you are alive today, your existence is historic. If you are living and breathing today, your existence is historic. It is historic because you are alive in one of the eras that needs you most. What you do today will affect generations tomorrow. And what you say today and act upon on today will realize and will determine whether future generations will curse us or applaud us. I urge you to act on this crisis, and as Pakistani youth, that you have the power inside you and within you to rally and to fight and hold our governments and corporations accountable for this crisis. And we must also realize that individual change, like changing our toothbrushes or not using plastic straws, will not help end this crisis. We must urge for systemic change, because this issue is so huge that it cannot be solved by one person changing their lifestyle. But what we need is activism. And I think that is the need of the hour. What you do now will determine the course of the future. Thank you.